because when a person is depressed or has any other mental health problem for a long time, if he or she is suffering for a long time and it remains undetected, at one point of time, this can be a very grave consequence. And in the present situation of COVID, social isolation or this social distancing that we are practicing now, that can be a very important factor, and it could contribute to the pathophysiology of all the psychiatric disorders that we are talking of now, and suicidal behavior too. In a famous book on suicide, Emil Durkheim, who was a very famous sociologist, he emphasized that social connectedness is a very critical factor in emotional health and social stability. Studies have shown that both objective social isolation, which means living alone, when a person lives alone totally, really he lives alone, he or she, and he does not have many caregivers or friends or any other social support in the vicinity, and a subjective sense of being alone, which means that the person maybe lives with family, or he has friends or other social support at hand, but for some reason, because of his mental health problems, he has a subjective sense of being alone. Both these objective social isolation and subjective social isolation are associated with suicidal ideations and behavior. And these observations are consistent across diverse cultures and populations, that is all over the world. And in our country, nonetheless, we find that this is a very, very important thing, because, see, suicide occurs it's not that only COVID-19 is being responsible for depression or any other stress or other mental health problems right now. They were there. Pre-COVID also, these were there. But what is happening now is, because of its present situation and the stress that it has brought along with it, persons are becoming more vulnerable, as if they cannot continue their lives anymore. So there have been instances in which this is occurring. There have been, again, we can say the plentiful of reasons, all the economic instability, all the social distancing, everything, the feeling, if all these things could contribute. But we must be aware of it. So, like I said, right now, there is uncertainty, there's fear of unknown and panic-inducing stories in the traditional and social media. So all these, the physical symptoms that are accompanying it, also sleep, I'll talk about that right now. Insomnia is something which is a very important thing that is happening in our lives right now. That is sleep, not only insomnia, but sleep problems. And that also could be thought of as a standalone risk factor for suicidal behaviors. So the uncertainty about everything, about the future, about what is going to happen, all this is making our minds more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, as well as suicidal behavior. Now, regarding sleep disorders. Sleep is a very important biological function, as we all know. And it is not only that it's how much we sleep, that is the quantity of sleep, but it is the quality. The quality of sleep is a very, very important thing, because sleep disorders, when we are facing any sleep disorders, it's not that only that we are sleeping less or sleeping more, but sometimes maybe we are spending the normal amount of time in bed, but when we get up, we are not feeling refreshed. We call that, in medical parlance, we say that the sleep is not restorative, which means that sleep has a very important restorative function in our body, which means that it kind of quietens down all the total nervous system, and it gives it, and when we wake up, if we feel refreshed, it means that sleep has done its work. So sleep disorders could be that we are taking more time to fall asleep. It could be we are waking up many times in the middle of the night and we cannot go back to sleep. Or it could be that we are waking up much earlier than we used to do before in the normal times. And then when we are lying down in bed, we are brooding and we are thinking of more anxiety and negative things. Now, in this situation, why could our sleep be disturbed? The first and foremost is because of our increasing anxiety, the depressive thoughts, the feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, worry, That is most important. There is a disruption in our daily schedule. We previously, everybody had a schedule. So be it school-going children, be it homemakers, be it office-going corporate sector people, be it teachers, doctors, everyone. Everyone had a schedule, which and his or her body adjusted for that schedule. We call it the circadian rhythm. In the circadian rhythm, we do not. The circadian rhythm means that our body adapts to when we sleep, when we wake up, when we when we have our biological needs. Everything is according to a circadian rhythm, but that is being disrupted right now. So we are because we do not have to go out for office. Maybe we are waking up late. We are working from home. We do not have our body posture is being disrupted. We are spending a lot of time in bed. So we are eating either more or eating less, or we are having irregular meal times right now. So if your daily schedule is disrupted, that definitely takes a toll on the sleep. There is more feelings of isolation. So naturally, people are not being able to, thinking about this decreases the sleep. Screen time, increasing screen time is something, very much increased screen time is something which is an area of concern for one and all, from children to elders, because now that we are spending so much time, we are having online, especially students, school and college students, as having even their academic schedules are on screen. Okay, so if we have a lot of screen time, that definitely has been shown that it affects the receptors in our brain, and it keeps us awake and activated for a long time. So we are unable to fall asleep. As a coping mechanism, people are consuming more substances, especially addictive substances like alcohol or tobacco, that can contribute to sleep disturbances. And also, sleep is accompanied by some unpleasant dreams, which are called nightmares. So if we have more nightmares in our sleep, or we have night terrors or nightmares in our sleep, it actually, even if we are not aware of those, but yet it actually it leaves us feeling more tired when we get up. The sleep is not refreshing sleep. This is something which is what mental health professionals all over the world are afraid that people are experiencing to some extent and will experience in the coming days. This is called post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is actually a psychological sequelae of a very serious life-threatening event which occurs in the life of a person. Which means that suppose a person has undergone a very severe natural catastrophe, like suppose like a tsunami or an earthquake, or something more personal or social, like he has been a victim of a robbery or a theft or an accident, a life-threatening accident, or some injury or some sexual violence. Then what happens is that even if the person has physically recovered from that, this is for the survivors of that stress, if the person has recovered from it, but yet the psychological trauma lingers on for a very long time after that. So there is a constellation of negative physical and psychological symptoms which occur after that. And this is something we are very much afraid could be one of very important sequelae of this COVID-19 pandemic. For people who are suffering, for people who are caring for those who are suffering, as well as for one and all. So what happens is that with PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder, persons cannot get over this trauma, and the symptoms will persist. Like the person will have nightmares, they will go on thinking about it, they will have flashbacks of the incident. Flashback means that time and again they will see that incident, or they can relive the moments. They feel that again they're in that moment, that they are running from hospital to hospital in search of beds, in search of to get tested. So the situation, if it evolves right now, that is what people are, that is something which can be a sequelae. So post-traumatic stress is something, and if this is much more probable in persons who are having anxiety and depression already or who are going through it right now. So if these things are not taken care of right now, this could be again an important area which could lead to stress in the lives of people. This is another point or another area which is not maybe highlighted much, but eating disorder is another psychiatric or psychological problem which occurs normally in our day-to-day lives, and in the present scenario, it could be a probability, and it is also happening we are finding patients who are coming up with problems of eating disorder. This means that there is a lack of control on the eating patterns, schedules, on the amounts of eating, and the quality of food that we are eating throughout the day. What happens is that now that because of everything is interlinked, now that people are not being in a state of, previously like they had a normal routine life, because there has been a total disarray in our normal routines or normal schedules. So what is happening is sometimes we find that maybe our eating patterns are not regular. When we are bored or when we are stressed, one of the unhealthy coping mechanisms that a lot of us adapt, especially youngsters, is binge eating, which means suddenly eating large amounts of usually food which is high calorie or which is not right or good for the body in large amounts. And that might be followed by a feeling of guilt and depression, because the person is aware that he or she has taken in a large amount, quite a large amount of food, which is not right for the body. And so what happens is that it is followed by guilt and depression. Anorexia nervosa is quite a serious condition in which a person has a total lack of appetite and kind of starves himself. So this kind of disorders, eating disorders, actually it's a different entity in which there is a fear of, there's something called bulimia nervosa, in which a person has a morbid fear of fatness and starts, and both in anorexia and in anorexia, there has a morbid fear of fatness. That is, he or she feels that by eating even a very little amount of, high calorie food, the person will become fat or will gain weight. So they always try to avoid, gradually, decrease the quantity of food that is food which is good for the body, and they suffer from a lot of physical symptoms and extreme loss of weight. And in case of bulimia, also there is binge eating episodes, which is followed by guilt and depression. Now, even if in this current pandemic, in this situation, even if it's not to that extent that it can be termed as anorexia or bulimia, but yet some disruptions in the eating schedule, in the quality and quantity of eating has been noticed in a lot of cases. So to combat this, we advise that we remain connected to your providers, that is your healthcare providers, to ask about the proper, if you feel that because of your change in routine, your diet pattern should change, then that should be, advice should be asked for. We must create a schedule for regular meals and snacks, and we can connect with a support system virtually if it is needed. Addiction, a very important area. Addiction, as we can see, is that all this COVID-19 related social isolation and stress can increase susceptibility to substance misuse. By substance, we mean, in our psychiatric viewpoint, we mean that is addictive substances. Substances which cause a change in our brain by which the person who is suffering from the disorder starts taking more and more. There's an increased craving for addictive substances like alcohol, cannabis, or cocaine, or even tobacco. So there will be more of substance misuse, increase in addiction, the habits of addiction, and relapse. That may be persons who have been actively trying to get themselves de-addicted or away from addiction or being treated. Because of all this ongoing stress, again, they're prone to relapse. Substance use can lead to immune system, respiratory, and pulmonary changes, and may increase the susceptibility to COVID-19 as well as its complications. So it is so very vital that we avoid this. People with addictions will also have depression, anxiety, and other mental health concerns. So there is a constant flow of stressful news, which will increase the tendency of persons, especially those persons who are prone to addiction. They feel that it will, if we take the substance, it will temporarily help us to feel better. But actually, they cause some permanent changes in the brain by which the damage is more. So it is very important that for persons who are in treatment for addiction, or who know that they are addicted, or that they are dependent on the substances for in their daily lives, it is important that they start seeking help right now, because now is the time when there's a chance that their addiction will increase, or even if they have successfully weaned themselves away from these substances, they might relapse. It is imperative that we talk a little bit about the mental health of children, because our children are similarly affected as adults. Presentations might be just a little bit different, because children will have all the plethora of depression, anxiety, eating problems, sleep problems. All these will also happen in children, but the presentations might be a little different in the sense that children cannot verbalize depression. It's very depending on their age. Suppose a 5, 6, 7-year-old child will not come to the doctor or the physician and say that, "Doctor, I am depressed," or will talk to their parents and say, "I'm depressed." But they will come up with a lot of physical symptoms in the form of, they might have headaches, they might have abdominal pains, they might be feeling lethargic, or it's seen that they might become more hyperactive, they might become more jittery, they are anxious, it's like they are having a lot of behavior problems. A child who was like quiet, calm, placid before, the parents might find that the child is not behaving in an appropriate manner now. So all this is because they are also being bombarded by the same amount of news, the same amount of, the social information that we are getting. So it's important that we recognize that. And it is better to be open-minded and frank with children and teenagers, depending on obviously the level of understanding and their age. Instead of giving, just some make-believe answers, and dismissing their worries, that you'd stop talking about it, it is not your concern. It is better to give frank answers without being too negativistic. And it's better to instill positive thoughts, like, giving them examples like how lots of researchers, doctors, scientists, or everyone all across the globe are working tirelessly to find solutions. People are coming up with vaccines. People are being tried with the vaccines. Different medications are coming up every day. There are many mild to moderate cases. For children, it's better that we try to hold up the positive aspects, but again, educating them about the need for precautions. That is very important. And children are quite flexible if we train them the right way, and if we create a positive environment for them, the maximum that we can, the more we can take care of the mental health of the children. Online classes are going on, and that is quite an important thing, because there are long screen times. We see every day regulations are coming in from the ministry, and it's like people are coming up with different opinions, how much screen time is good, how much will cause headaches, how much will cause eye strain. So yes, we must strike a balance. Other than all these online academics, it's important that the family time is important, the time for them connecting with nature, for them for the children to, even if they cannot go outside to play, at least if they have some free space in their home or in the terrace, maybe they can go for, some physical exercise, at least 30-45 minutes a day. And if parents or any other elders join them in these fun activities, the more the better. Since this is a college forum in which I'm speaking, so this, I think, is something which is all of you are much more, you're facing this much more than I am, because the mental health problems in college is that because of these postponements of the exams, cancelling of the exams or the semesters, all the important research projects, persons who are undergoing internships or any other training programs, everything is being stalled. There is delay in graduation, delay in the results, publication of results, uncertainty about jobs. There's increased expenditure for students in hostels or other residences. increased expenditure for commuting. So all these plethora of things is leading to quite a huge amount of stress among the college students. And so I think teachers are doing, I'm in awe of all the teachers, the school or college teachers who are doing a mammoth task in, arranging these online classes, research, virtual meetings that are going on, virtual offices to guide students with stipulated hours. I've heard that there are being measures being taken so that students can continue with scholarship or funds. There are many mental health awareness programs like this one. And so all these things are very much advocated. And this is really going to help, and this is the need of the hour. And tele-mental health counseling centers to be established. This is something which is being advocated from the center. There are many centers all over the country, especially from NIMHANS in Bangalore. They have come out with these tele-counseling protocols, and that is being practiced everywhere. Even in our state also, we are practicing that. So, especially for the students. So, all these things have to be kept in mind, because one thing, if you think of it in a manner that yes, the stress is there, but stress was always there. It's not that the COVID-19 is the only thing that is creating stress. So we must remember one thing, that we have to tackle this in a manner which is feasible, which is practical, and which will cause as much as, less disruption in the routine. Because, okay, real classes, real talking to teachers or friends might be stalled right now, but teaching is not stalled. Education will not be stalled. So if you want to learn, there are lots of opportunities. There are lots of ways in which everybody is coming up, everybody is thinking, planning. Of course, there are many, many backward areas and areas where students are still not having access to these platforms. That is something where every moment we need to work upon, because those people are having the maximum amount of stress. So I'm sure something can be worked out very soon, and so that the academic sector can be, the optimum level can be balanced. An optimum level must be achieved without causing too much of screen exposure or too much of stress or too much of burden at the same time. Here I feel that if we are talking about mental health, especially among children, adolescents, teenagers, and college students, I think it is imperative that we talk about staying safe online. When I mentioned about the addictions, the most important addiction that I should say right now, what we are facing, other than the ones we know, that is alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, cocaine, is the cyber addiction. Okay, so staying safe online is also the need of the hour. If we are spending so much time online right now, be it for academics, be it for meetings, be it for any other issues, we must stay safe. So we must remember that whenever we are online, we must try to do our activities, whatever we are doing, it must be maintaining the safety norms. Like it is when you're, suppose on a social networking site, it's okay to block someone if you're not comfortable communicating with. It's important that we do not accept requests from strangers in these vulnerable times. These are times of vulnerable times. The person might say that, there might be requests from others, or there might be some websites, or there might be some links which say that there is a very golden cure for this COVID-19, or there might be there might be links which say that if you do this, then you will have, people will help you if you need hospitalization. So be very careful when accepting such friend requests or, clicking on such links. For emails, if they look suspicious, we will mark it. We will not share passwords with anyone, not even with helplines. And obviously, while using public computers, we will remember to log out. This is always important. This I have mentioned right now because even in this present scenario, when we are under a lot of stress, sometimes we tend to slip. And then we might fall into another stress-creating situation. So, to mind your mind for good mental health, we will have a routine. We will try to maintain a routine even while being at home, that our sleep, meals, exercise will be regular and scheduled. We will have time for yoga, even if we have not practiced it before. There are a lot of very good websites. There are a lot of good websites which help you to practice good yoga, not only the asanas, but also the breathing exercises which alleviate a lot of stress. Leisure is very important. So is family time. A working space in your home, set up your space and schedule your time. So if we are working from home, whatever, if you are students or any other aspect, I mean, if adults, we will set up our space and we will schedule our time. At that time of the day, we will behave at home in a manner, or we will try to be in a manner as if we have gone out, as if we are in our office. So we will wake up at right hours, we will get dressed, we will take a shower, we will take our breakfast, we will in a right time, and then we will sit down to work. Other than that, we will do passion projects, which means that we will pursue our hobbies. We will keep time for that. So these are the positive effects of stress that, like I said before, everything is not negative. Because now that we are working from home, we have a lot of people, most people, and even students, we have a lot of time in our hands. There is so much less commuting. There is so much, we do not have to get dressed and go for work all the time. So what we do some, utilize that extra time. Do passion projects for which you did not have time before, like suppose gardening, making crafts, or something, playing music, whatever. We will try to minimize the news feeds. That is, we will see or hear a more reliable news every day from the print media or from the television, but that should not exceed, that should not be the whole throughout the day we're sitting in front of the TV and finding out the number of positives. Social contact is important in the sense that we will virtually be on contact, we will speak over phone, we will, on online, through video calls, we will talk with others, with our neighbors. We will not socially isolate others, especially people who are either elderly or who are prone to having psychological problems, who are alone, or people who are having these COVID symptoms. We will limit our use of alcohol, smoking, beware of excessive screen time. And like I said, we will not discriminate. Rather, the mindset should change. We should try, to reach out a helping hand. And we will also, very important thing is for a lot of people, if we connect with community or faith-based organizations, even virtually right now, because that is something which is, mentally healing or provides solace for a lot of people. So anything that gives a positive state of mind, that leaves you in a positive state of mind, should be practiced. But it should be scientific, and our precautions and prevention should be intact. So finally, where we must know the role of mental health professionals right now, because reaching out for help is of utmost importance. It could be a family physician, that is a general physician. It could be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, counselors, and all these services must be provided in a scientific, logical, and goal-directed manner. In some cases, medicines might be required. So it's better that you comply with your doctor's advice. Whoever gives you the medicine, it must be a doctor, and you comply with that. It is not the time to experiment with drugs, to stop drugs like at your own fancies or whims, or to start taking, some sedatives because your father, mother, or somebody else has taken them and you're not having enough sleep, so you start popping pills. No, it must be done in a scientific, logical manner, and it should be taken at the advice of a doctor. Psychotherapy is helpful. It helps to alleviate all the coping skills that I have mentioned in this slide. If these must be tried first, because it's not practical that everybody starts rushing to a mental health professional right now. But if we do all these things, if we keep this in mind, then we can take care of our mental health by ourselves. And if at one point we feel that no, we are becoming vulnerable, even in spite of all these, we are not really, being able to mind our minds, then we need the role of mental health professionals. And other than medications, psychotherapy, which is also another scientific method to deal with mental health issues, will help, alleviate the automatic, the maladaptive negative thoughts that come to our mind. It will help you to rationalize and help you find better coping strategies for stress management. So these are